He had volunteered at the museum for 30 years but never told his story, until a retired Air Force pilot visitor noticed his old wing pin. "Are you a Tuskegee Airman?" The question broke 75 years of silence. Colonel Anderson recognized that wing pin. Tuskegee Airman pin. His heart started racing. These men were legends, red tails, never lost a bomber, but the elderly museum volunteer had never mentioned it. When people asked, he'd just say, "Former pilot," nothing more. Anderson wondered why he was so modest. "Sir, are you a Tuskegee Airman?" The old man smiled and nodded. "Welcome to the last stand." Do you also have someone in your family with military background who doesn't talk much about their stories? Share in the comments. James Washington had been volunteering as a tour guide at the Memphis Aviation Museum for 30 years. At 75 years old, average height, gray-haired, always neatly dressed, he was known and loved by everyone who visited the museum. James had a special interest, the P-51 Mustang. Every day he would stand beside that aircraft, examining it with careful eyes. When he told visitors about the plane's technical specifications, there was a different tone in his voice, as if he had a personal connection with that aircraft. What set James apart from other volunteers at the museum was his deep knowledge about aircraft. When he talked about the P-51 Mustang's engine details, weapon systems, and even flight maneuvers, his eyes would light up. "This aircraft is a 1944 model," he would tell visitors. "Merlin engine, 695 horsepower. Saw a lot of action over European skies." But he never talked about himself. He would just say, "I learned it from books. That Wednesday changed everything." Colonel David Anderson, a retired Air Force pilot, was visiting the museum with his son Kevin. He had flown F-16s for 40 years, an experienced pilot. While listening to James in front of the P-51 Mustang, something caught his attention. The elderly guide had a small pin on his shirt. Metal, faded but still recognizable. Anderson's heart started racing. He recognized that pin, Tuskegee Airman wing pin. Anderson had only seen it in museum display cases during his 40-year career. This pin was given to America's first black fighter pilots. Anderson knew these men's story. In the 1940s, during the height of racism, they had trained and gone to war. They were called Red Tails. Most importantly, they never lost a bomber. They had perfect records on escort missions. Anderson couldn't take his eyes off the pin. Could this be possible? Could this modest, quiet man standing before him really be a Tuskegee Airman? As James continued the tour showing the P-51's cockpit, Anderson watched his movements, hand positions, the way he showed the controls. This man seemed like he had really piloted aircraft. "Excuse me, sir," Anderson said quietly. James turned. "Yes, sir?" Anderson took a deep breath. "Sir, are you a Tuskegee Airman?" The museum suddenly fell silent. Other visitors turned and looked. James's face changed. He smiled and slowly nodded his head. "Yes," he said quietly. "A very long time ago." Anderson straightened up and bowed respectfully. "Sir, it's a great honor to meet you." James looked around. A small crowd had gathered. The elderly man took a deep breath. "I trained at Tuskegee in 1943, he said quietly. "I was a P-51 Mustang pilot, 332nd Fighter Group." Anderson's eyes widened. "Red tails?" "Yes," James smiled. "We had red-tailed aircraft. We flew from Italy, escort missions." His voice trembled. It was still hard to talk about these subjects. "I flew 52 missions." James continued. "We protected B-17 and B-24 bombers, to Berlin, Munich, everywhere." His eyes drifted to distant places. "The toughest mission was March 1944. We were protecting 50 bombers. The Luftwaffe was waiting for us." Anderson held his breath. He had read about this story in history books. "We lost friends that day." James's voice grew quiet. "But we never lost a bomber. That was our pride. After the war ended, we returned home." James wore a bitter smile. "We thought we'd be welcomed as heroes, but in Alabama, colored-only signs were still waiting for us." The silence in the museum deepened. We had to sit in the back of buses, couldn't eat at the same restaurants. We had fought Hitler, but were second-class citizens in our own country. Colonel Anderson's eyes filled with tears. Sir, that's terrible. That's why I don't talk much about those times. James said. In the 1950s, I tried to become a pilot. No airline would hire me. I worked at the post office for 35 years. But sir, Anderson said, you're a hero. James shook his head. I just did my job, protected my friends, brought the bombers home. You never lost a bomber. Anderson spoke excitedly. That's an incredible achievement. Colonel Anderson pulled out his phone. Sir, if you permit, may I call my friends at the Pentagon? They need to hear your story. James was surprised. No need, son. Sir, it's very necessary. You're an American hero. And this pin. Anderson pointed to the pin. You have the right to wear this pin. Other visitors in the museum started applauding. James's eyes watered. Museum Director Linda Thompson came running. Mr. Washington, are you really a Tuskegee Airman? I didn't know for 30 years. I'm just a volunteer guide, James said modestly. No, sir, Linda spoke with determination. You are this museum's most valuable treasure. We're going to create an official exhibit. We'll tell your story. James started to protest, but Linda continued. America needs to hear this story. Anderson asked curiously. Sir, do you remember your first mission? James's face lit up. Of course. June 20, 1944. My first escort mission. I was 20 years old. My heart was pounding like it would burst from my chest. We took off from Ramitelli Airfield, 15 P-51 Mustangs. I was flying with call sign Redtail 7. Our mission was to escort 24 B-24 Liberators to the Ploesti oil refineries. Everyone in the museum held their breath. It was my first time going into real combat. We were going to apply what we learned in training for real. Flying in formation, I could hear my friends' voices on the radio. We were all young, we were all scared, but none of us showed it. Over the Adriatic, we saw them. Messerschmitt Bf-109s, 12 of them. Fewer than us in number, but experienced. James's hands started trembling. My first sight was to break their formation and keep them away from our bombers. Squadron leader yelled, "Break right." That moment, the longest 20 minutes of my life began. My P-51 was magnificent. The Germans were fast, but we were more agile. A Messerschmitt got on my tail. I dove, then made a sharp left turn. We learned that maneuver at Tuskegee. Anderson listened spellbound. The German pilot was experienced. He was trying to corner me. That's when I heard Tommy's voice on the radio. Redtail 7, you got one on your right. Tommy Jackson, my closest friend. He was from Chicago, 20 years old like me. James's voice broke. Tommy dove to save me. He surprised the German pilot, saved me. But his own aircraft took 20mm rounds. His engine was smoking. Bail out, I yelled on the radio. But Tommy wasn't responding. His P-51 was falling toward the Adriatic. I couldn't save him. No one in the museum was breathing. We had lost Tommy, but the mission continued. 23 bombers still needed our protection. I wiped my tears, returned to formation. Squadron leader Major Foster said on radio, "Red Tails, we're bringing the bombers home." For Tommy, we were all thinking the same thing. Over Ploesti, the flak was very intense. German anti-aircraft guns filled the sky with black smoke. The bombers hit their targets. The return journey began. Flying home, I counted 22 bombers. We had lost one. The pilot was wounded but alive. He made an emergency landing in Italy. When I landed at Ramitelli, my legs were shaking. It was my first mission, and I had lost my friend. My commander, Major Foster, came to me. "Washington," he said, "Tommy saved you because you would have done what he did." This is brotherhood. That night, Tommy's bed was empty. I looked at his photograph. I didn't know how to write a letter to his mother. My toughest mission was March 6th, 1944, Berlin, 1,000 bomber raid. We were going to escort 10 B-17s and B-24s. James covered his face with his hands. The Luftwaffe met us with full force. More than 100 German fighters. The sky was full of metal and fire. Pilot Eddie Martinez's voice on radio. Redtail 12, Focke-Wulf on my 6 o'clock. I tried to save Eddie, I chased the Focke-Wulf 190. But it was too late. Eddie's P-51 caught fire. I couldn't see his parachute. That day we lost 5 Tuskegee Airmen, but we saved 30 bombers. In 1945, the war ended. We were all going home. We thought we'd be welcomed as heroes in America. James continued with a bitter smile. I landed in Montgomery, Alabama, 50 miles from Tuskegee. I was wearing my uniform, my wings pin on my chest. At the bus terminal, white-only and colored-only signs were waiting for me. I had forgotten during the war. I was still a second-class citizen in America. I tried to become a commercial airline pilot. Eastern Airlines, Delta, American, they all gave the same answer: position filled. In 1947, I moved to Memphis. I found work at the post office. I was delivering mail. The same hands that had flown a P-51 Mustang were now carrying letters. I married in 1950. My wife Helen knew my story but told me not to tell others. People won't understand, she said. I worked at the post office for 35 years. Every day I delivered mail. Nobody asked about my past, and I didn't tell. Helen passed away in 1987. We didn't have children. I retired in 1990. I sat alone at home. I watched war documentaries on television, but there was nothing about Tuskegee Airmen. As if we had never existed. As if we had never participated in that war. In 1995, the Memphis Aviation Museum opened. I heard they were displaying a P-51 Mustang. I wanted to see it. When I saw that aircraft, I returned to 50 years ago. My cockpit in Red Tail 7, Tommy's voice on radio. Moments when Eddie laughed. The museum director said they were looking for volunteers. Do you know about aircraft? He asked. A little, I said. I've been here for 30 years. I come every day. I stand beside the P-51. I remember my friends. Colonel Anderson made a phone call. I'm calling the Pentagon, sir. This story needs to be heard. No need, son. James said. I just did my job. No, sir. You and your friends made history, and America is grateful to you. Anderson called the Pentagon. Air Force Historical Research Agency? Colonel Anderson speaking. I found a Tuskegee Airman in Memphis. A week later, 3 people came to the museum. Colonel Maria Rodriguez from the Air Force Historical Research Center. 2 historians with her. Mr. Washington. Colonel Rodriguez said, We've reviewed your service records. 52 missions, no bomber losses, Distinguished Flying Cross Medal. James was surprised. Medal? Yes, sir. It was awarded in 1945 but never delivered to you. Many things got lost in those days. Colonel Rodriguez took out a box. Inside was a shining medal. Mr. Washington, Colonel Rodriguez said, on behalf of the Air Force, I present you this medal, 78 years late. Everyone in the museum was standing and applauding. Tears were streaming from James's eyes. For Tommy, James whispered. For Eddie, for all my friends I lost. No, sir, Colonel Rodriguez said. This medal is for you, for your courage and sacrifice. Museum Director Linda stepped forward. Mr. Washington, we're preparing a special exhibit in your name at this museum. We'll call it Tuskegee Airmen, Forgotten Heroes. The story appeared in local media. Headlines read, 75-year-old museum volunteer revealed as WWII hero. James was uncomfortable with this attention. I just did my job, he kept repeating. But letters started arriving. Children and grandchildren of former soldiers wrote, Mr. Washington, my father owes you so much. You brought him home. My grandfather was a B-17 pilot. He completed 25 missions with your escort. A month later, 6 Tuskegee Airmen came to Memphis, all over 90 years old in wheelchairs, but their eyes were shining. James Washington, shouted Frank Carter, former Red Tail 4. I've been looking for you for 30 years. Frank, James was crying. Are you alive? Of course I'm alive. Do you remember Tommy? James stopped. Tommy, he died. No, Frank said, smiling. Tommy's alive. He lives in Detroit. He's coming tomorrow. The next day, Tommy Jackson, 94 years old, came to the museum with his son Marcus. When James saw him, his knees gave out. Tommy, you died. Your plane crashed. Tommy laughed. You couldn't see my parachute because you were too high. I fell into the Adriatic. Yugoslav fishermen rescued me. The two old friends hugged and cried. I blamed myself for 75 years, James said. Why? Tommy asked. You saved me. You drove away the German pilot. No one in the museum could hold back their tears. Red tails, Tommy said. Brothers forever. Brothers forever, James repeated. If these powerful stories appeal to you too, don't forget to subscribe to the Last Stand channel. We continue to bring you more hero stories every day. James Washington still works at the Memphis Aviation Museum today, but he's no longer just a volunteer guide. He carries the title Tuskegee Airman Honor Ambassador, and every day he stands beside the P-51 Mustang. Now he proudly tells, I am Red Tail 7, and I brought my friends home.